Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So I just watched Captain America Brave New World. Let's talk about it. So Captain America Brave New World is directed by Julius Onah, and it follows on the story of Sam Wilson taking on the mantle of Captain America, which we saw happen at the end of Avengers Endgame 6 years ago. Well, for those of you guys who dropped off of Marvel and haven't been paying attention to what's been going on since Avengers Endgame, you finally have a follow-up to that little storyline that was teased at the end of that film. So we finally get to see Sam Wilson as Captain America back in action in the suit with his wings and Red Wing and the vibranium shield all together, and it must have been so surprising and so glorious and so magnificent to you all, especially if you haven't been paying attention in class for the last 6 years. But for those of us who have been trudging along with phases 4 and 5 of the MCU, we already know what's up because we followed on the continuation of this storyline in the series Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which was one of the very first Disney Plus Marvel series to come out in 2021. And there we got to see a deeper dive into Sam's psyche and his thoughts following this huge decision that Steve made to give him the shield and therefore the mantle of Captain America. We got a deep dive into what this meant to Sam as a black man in America. How would he represent America and all of its institutions and the government in light of the horrible things that have happened to black people in America historically and currently. And there was even a prime example and personification of all of these horrible things in the form of Isiah Bradley, who was the lost Captain America or lost super soldier, and he was a black man in the US Army who was experimented on. He had the super soldier serum, but he went through hell. He was imprisoned, he was tortured, and like I said, he was forgotten in history, just as many black heroes have been in real life. So there was a lot that was explored in the Falcon and Winter Soldier series. I would highly, if you're gonna get anything from this review, I would highly recommend you check out the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series if you haven't already. If you are walking into this film not having seen that series, you are missing out on a lot of context cues. Yes, you are. You are missing out on a lot of really rich, important story that wasn't actually present in this film. And so I would highly recommend you check it out. Not just for Captain America 4, but also for the upcoming Marvel project Thunderbolts. This series dived into both Sam and Bucky's story post-snap, and so considering the fact that they both have projects that they are headlining this year, it would actually be worthwhile for you to check out this series because it's a 2-for-1 situation. You get more context on both of their stories. But anyways, enough about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. This isn't a review of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I have plenty of those on my channel which you can check out right now. But no, like I said, this is a continuation of that storyline, but in a very light way that doesn't really require you to have watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier to fully understand, what's going on in Sam's life at this point. You kind of get the broad strokes, and there is a lot of dialogue and exposition that kind of tries to fill in the gaps for people who haven't bothered to watch the show. And at this point in Sam's story, he's already been Captain America for 3 years now, and he's already gotten into the rhythm of things. People already recognize him and like him as Captain America, and he's put in so much effort into making the persona his own and trying to reflect and represent all of the things that Steve did using that shield, especially in light of the imposter that we got in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Sam wants to be the complete opposite of that, and so you see him riding this line between being a physical force of Captain America. He has the wings, he has Red Wing, he has the shield, shield and has all of this Wakandan vibranium technology, and that establishes his physical force on the field. But then on the flip side, you have the more diplomatic side of Sam's Captain America, and he's working with the authorities, he's working with the army, more on that in a second, and he's working with the people in power, like even the President of the United States, in order to kind of toe this line between doing what he can as a hero and former Avenger, and also kind of following the rules, especially the Accords, the Sokovia Accords, remember those? Yeah, following that still and trying to find his place as a Captain America in this post-snap world. So that is my very quick summary and run through of the story of Captain America Brave New World. I don't just want to retell exactly what happens in this review. I want to get stuck into the issues and the positives that I felt about this film, mostly because I have somewhere to be in like no time at all. So we're gonna need to make this quick, I'm afraid. But first of all, to give you guys my overall impression of this film, you should really watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now, to start us off, we have the story itself, which had quite a few issues with it. Now, I appreciated the fact that they were going for the political intrigue angle, trying to tie back to one of the greatest Marvel films that we got just over 10 years ago in Captain America, the Winter Soldier. That film had that espionage sort of political thriller angle that worked so well for the character of Captain America. And this was, of course, the Russo brothers' first outing within the MCU, and they blew us all away with how they were able to execute that storyline, seamlessly tying together that sort of like theme of espionage and a political thriller with the Winter Soldier storyline, kind of exposing how Hydra had always been within S.H.I.E.L.D. and of course the reveal that the Winter Soldier was actually Bucky Barnes. All of that was just A++++, and that's just to do with the story. That's not even getting into the action, the performance. Like, please, we all know, we were all there, okay, for Captain America the Winter Soldier. So it makes sense that they were trying to echo this with a new political thriller angle. This time, like I said, diving into Sam Wilson's Captain America, his place within the establishment as a Black Captain America, which was explored, like I said, in the series. But this time around, he's going up against a brand new president in the form of General Ross, and they of course have that history together. Like I said, General Ross ended up kicking Sam into the raft, so they definitely have some tension, but they're trying to figure out how they can work together now. So that is a very interesting angle to take, especially because this film also wanted to include some Hulk characters and get that Red Hulk angle. So in terms of ways to get to the end destination, I think this political thriller route was a pretty intriguing one, in theory at least. In theory, on paper, it should have been intriguing, but in practice, it just ended up falling quite flat. It didn't quite have that tension and suspense that Captain America the Winter Soldier had. Like, that film was just so much tighter, and it was just so much, well, suspenseful. I was really invested in that story and what was going on in S.H.I.E.L.D. and how deep this Hydra infiltration actually ran, the attempted assassination of Nick Fury. Like, we had key players here that we actually really cared about, and there was a lot on the line, and that kept us on the edge of our seats. Whereas here, there aren't too many key players that we care about. We have very few characters that we're even familiar with, and even though, of course, like, many of us are huge fans of Harrison Ford and whatnot, I do think that it does have a negative side effect, you know, having this brand new actor play a character that was in the franchise for like 15 years or so, because he just feels like a brand new character. Like, you don't really get a sense of that history because he just doesn't have the same face as the previous man. Unfortunately, that actor died, so there's nothing that can be done about that, but that is a side effect of that, is that you don't really have that same kind of connection. And there was a similar thing with Joaquin Torres, aka New Falcon. I mean, those of us who watch the show are more enamored with him than perhaps someone who hasn't, but there are a lot of new factors in here that means that that we're not quite as invested in the individual characters of this political thriller than we were in Captain America the Winter Soldier, where we had Natasha and Steve and Nick Fury, so many familiar faces that we actually wanted to see succeed by the end. So that's number one. Number two is the inclusion of Isiah Bradley in this storyline. I had huge issues with this. On Black History Month, god damn it Disney, god damn it Marvel, I understand where they were going with this story in terms of Isiah Bradley being this former soldier who went through so much. Like, he has a very Bucky storyline. He went through so much, but as a black man, he was just lost in time, completely forgotten and left to a kind of rot in Maryland. No one cared about him, but Sam was the one that restored his pride, that restored his dignity, and brought his story forward for the whole world to see for the first time. And so that was a really wonderful storyline that we got in the series, and I really loved how they capped that off at the end, where he's included in the museum. Like, it was just wonderful to bring this character back, to humiliate him in this way, to have him be arrested and imprisoned for the attempted assassination of the president, even though he's not the one that did it. He was under mind control and whatnot. But just having that visual really sucked. Like, maybe I'm the only one, but I was just really upset by that visual of Isiah Bradley being, you know, arrested and put in that orange jumpsuit. I hated it. I hated it so much. I was literally sitting in the cinema during those scenes, like rolling my eyes and tutting, because it just felt so out of order. Leave this man alone. I would have been fine if he was just a cameo where Sam goes to train with Isiah, and then he brings along Joaquin. Like, that could have been fine, a nice little nod to the series. But to have him go through that whole story where he's actually imprisoned again, and he has this like really impassioned speech where he's like, Sam, don't let them, you know, take me back there, after all of the pain and trauma that he's gone through. This black suffering for what? Like, for this film, it wasn't even well executed enough to warrant this display of black suffering, is my issue. So I really hated that little storyline. It could have been Joaquin instead of Isiah. Leave Isiah alone. He's been through so much already. And then in the end, when he makes best friends with Ruth, okay, he's like, oh, I'm gonna go see a film with her, whatever. I'm like, this is literally disgusting and filthy and horrible. Like, he's gonna make friends with a CIA agent, really? Because the CIA historically has such a great relationship with black people in the world, but especially in America. Please be serious. It was just dumb as I hated it. I absolutely hated the way that they treated Isiah as a character. I just wanted him to have a fun time, let his hair down, you know, wear his best suit and visit the White House. Like, just keep it pushing. We did not have to go through all of that black suffering and trauma with this character again, especially not for this trash ass storyline. And what made it worse is that Sam was still working with the president, even though the president knew damn well that Isiah was not responsible for his attempted assassination. Sam was still trying to collaborate, still trying to find a middle ground or whatever, knowing that his friend was rotting in prison, waiting the death penalty. They were about to put this man down, and Sam was still trying to talk things out and find a resolution instead of trying to break out Isiah. And that moment, I'm getting so angry. That moment where Isiah is getting arrested and Sam's like, don't, if you fight it, it's gonna be worse. Like, telling Isiah to just submit to the police. Guys, honestly, I hate it. I hated the way they included this character so much. Just the visual pissed me off to no end. Now, another issue that I had with the story itself was the inclusion of Thaddeus Ross, aka President Ross. This turned out to be a bit of a sequel to 2008's Incredible Hulk, and I don't know how I feel about that. That's not really what I signed up for when I went to go see a Captain America movie. And we've seen Marvel do this well in the past, where they've incorporated Hulk storylines or the Hulk himself in other films like Thor Ragnarok or the Avengers films. Like, we've seen them do it well before, but there was something about this that just kind of overrid Sam's entire story for this film that made it feel like a cheap way to just do a Hulk sequel without infringing on Universal's copyright on the characters. That's pretty much what it felt like. They just wanted to do a Red Hulk movie with Harrison Ford at the center, replacing William Hurt, and just kind of circle back to the storyline that we saw in The Incredible Hulk, with the leader re-emerging as a villain, and he's angry and vengeful, wants the whole world to see Thaddeus Ross for the monster that he really is. Like, all of that just felt like it belonged in a Hulk sequel. And again, Marvel technically can't make a Hulk sequel because apparently Universal still has the rights to a lot of the Hulk characters, and they are the only ones that can make a Hulk movie at this point. Although I don't know when that expires. Maybe Marvel should just wait until that expires so they can circle back to this Hulk story. But anyways, and then they just plopped Sam in the middle of it, and it barely felt like a Captain America story. To me, it would have made more sense, and it would have felt more like a Captain America story if they continued on with the storylines from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series. There, they had set up this idea that Sharon wasn't the ally that they thought she was. She was in with the US government, but she was also this queen pin in Madripoor, which they never really found out. And so they set up that little storyline at the end of the series, never to be followed through with again, which is something that Marvel has done a lot over the last couple of phases. But this would have been the perfect opportunity to continue on, no? Like, this would have been the perfect opportunity to bring back these storylines, bring back Sharon Carter, bring back Zemo, and most importantly, bring back Bucky. The fact that Bucky wasn't in this film much was a huge disaster and mistake for Sam's first appearance as Captain America. And I already said this, I already predicted that this would be an issue, but oh boy, was it an issue. Back to the Hulk issue. Yeah, it just felt like Sam was just kind of drowning in the middle of a Hulk sequel that he had no business playing such a huge part in. Like, he really did not need to be in this story. It would have made far more sense if it was Bruce Banner going through all of this. But I guess for people who were reluctant to see a black Captain America or didn't really care about Sam Wilson as a character, they kind of needed to dangle the carrot of getting a Red Hulk in this story for it to feel like a major movie event worth seeing. We'll see if that works, but I still stand by the idea that, like, if the film is mid because of that creative decision, then it wouldn't have been worth it at all, really. And speaking of General Ross, another issue that I had with this story, I have no time. Another issue that I had was this idea that because he has a daughter, he's really secretly a good person. Let's get rid of this concept. Let's get rid of this idea. Let's abolish this idea from all Hollywood movies now, please, because it is dumb as hell. We have seen General Ross's track record. Like, we have seen his rap sheet over the last 15 or 16 years, and so we are under no delusion that this man is a good guy. Like, if you've watched The Incredible Hulk, then you know he's not. And then you saw him in 2016's Civil War, where he was just as problematic. And did I mention that he threw Sam and co in the raft? Like, he is not a good guy, especially within the context of the MCU. And now you have this whole storyline where he's trying to turn over a new leaf for his daughter, who he really misses and hopes will go on a walk with him across the blossoms to see the cherry blossom garden. Boo! Boo! It was utter nonsense, truly. There was no strong motive for him to actually want to change and turn over a new leaf. The idea that he would want to do all of this because he suddenly remembered that he had a daughter who doesn't want to speak to him is just really weak. It was poor writing, poor character development, and it just did not feel justified at all. It felt very out of character, which certainly didn't help considering that we were now looking at Harrison Ford's face rather than William Hurt. The idea, the delusion, the mere concept of the United States government coming up with a treaty, like actually leading on a treaty to fairly distribute a brand new, valuable, extremely valuable natural resource to the entire world. The idea that they would actually do that, please do not make me laugh. Please do not make me guffaw. That was, listen, in this entire MCU filled with aliens, filled with Hulks, whether they be green, red, or otherwise, this entire universe filled with super soldiers and Norse gods and talking raccoons, of all of the wacky things that happen in the MCU, the idea that the US government would want to fairly distribute a valuable natural resource and would not want to take full control over it for its own benefit is the wackiest thing I've ever it's the wackiest thing I've ever heard in the entirety of the MCU. Like, well done, Marvel. Well done, Marvel. You have fully topped yourself, because that makes utterly and entirely no sense whatsoever. Which brings me to the ultimate critique of this film. And get ready for this, okay? Try not to get too offended. This film is sheer, utter, pro-military, pro-Americana nonsense. Like, this film is literally just propaganda. This film, and I know that Marvel films have gotten that critique in the past, but I guess it was an easier pill to swallow when the stories were good, when we liked the characters, when the world building was fine. Like, we could handle all of the pro-military, pro-America propaganda, and when we liked everything that was going on around it. And that's kind of the same as, like, say, a Top Gun Maverick, right? Like, I reviewed Top Gun Maverick a couple of years ago, and I very much pointed out that it was certainly pro-Americana, pro-Air Force propaganda. Like, I could see what was going on, but I was still entertained. Because it was a well-made film with a decent story and really compelling characters, and then Tom Cruise at the center of it doing Tom Cruise things. So I had the time of my life, actually. I had the time of my life watching this American propaganda movie. But here, in this here case, no. No, I did not find myself enjoying this film half as much. And the idea that the US government would want to, again, share out adamantium. We want to lead on a treaty that would make adamantium equally accessible to all countries in the world. That was just the cherry on top of the propaganda cake to me. I said, no more lies. I said, cut the track. We need to go home. This is outrageous. This is ridiculous. So I can't go into too many of the issues that I had with this story, but just know that I thought it was quite weak. It certainly wasn't up there with the best stories that we have gotten out of the MCU roster. I mean, are Marcus and McFeely really the only ones that can write a good MCU movie? Like, is that really the case? It's starting to look like it is the case, because everyone else, or almost everyone else that tries, really fails, man. I mean, there was a time where Taika Waititi could do it, but then he couldn't anymore. And then you have Ryan Coogler, who just delivers excellence upon excellence, but he can't direct every single film. What is going on here? And speaking of directors, we have a brand new director in the form of Julius Onah, who directed this movie. And as much as I really want to shower him with praise and say he did an excellent job here, I just don't think that he did, I'm afraid. And this movie just looked and felt like a shambles. There weren't really any strong directing choices and creative choices that made this film stand out. Who would have thought that the comedic duo of the Russo brothers would have delivered on such a strong political thriller? But in 2014, they showed us that they absolutely could. Like, not only can they do Community, but they could also do this. I mean, that film had such a unique stamp, especially in the landscape of superhero films at that point. But here we just have an erasure of anything unique, anything remarkable, anything of anything, really. And as much as people gave Nia DaCosta so much shit for the Marvels, at least that one had a distinct feel. It had a distinct flavor of fun and Disney Channel and girly. And I can't even say the same for this movie. Like, this movie to me felt like a dad movie. Yeah, I'll say it. It felt like a dad movie. It was the kind of B movie you would see released in like early January, starring Gerard Butler or Jason Statham. And if it wasn't for the presence of these Marvel characters just kind of plopped in the middle of them, that's exactly how this movie would have been treated, as a direct-to-video Gerard Butler political thriller, like White House Down or Black House Up or something. You know, like those kind of films that come out early in the year that pretty much everyone ignores except dads. And the directing wasn't the only technical issues that the film had. You also had awful cinematography, although that's nothing new in this new batch of blockbusters that we have gotten in the 2020s. But this was just yet another example of awful cinematography in a blockbuster movie. It just looks bad. Half the time the actors look like they're standing in the volume or in the middle of a green screen, and then you look at the behind the scenes footage and you see that those cherry blossoms were actually real, like the trees were actually there. They went through the bother of actually trying to set this up as a physical set. So then tell me why the end product still looks whack. Like it still looks like they're standing in front of a green screen. I don't know if the art of cinematography is truly lost in Hollywood right now. I don't know what is going on, but it just looks garbage, man. It just looks trash. And it's such a shame because you have talent in front of the camera trying to do their best and make something happen, but it's so distracting when everything looks blurry and off and uncanny valley-like. Something needs to be done about this terrible cinematography. I know there are good cinematographers out there because I saw Dune Part 2. But someone needs to bring them over to the MCU and these other blockbusters because clearly no one else is getting it. And even something as simple as the music, like both the score and the soundtrack was so underwhelming. Why on earth would they not bring back Henry Jackman, who did the music for most, if not all, of the previous Captain America films, as well as Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Why would they not bring him back? I do not understand what's going on. As a matter of fact, why didn't they bring back the whole talent, the whole team behind Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Because that series was genuinely excellent. Why didn't they bring back Malcolm Spellman? I know that Nate Moore, who produced Falcon and the Winter Soldier, also produced this, but where was Malcolm Spellman? And almost more importantly, where was Carrie Scogland? Carrie Scogland, who directed the episodes of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, brought something so fresh and so interesting and excellent about that series. Clearly she was needed. Clearly she was desperately needed here because she would have at least elevated this film, even with its dodgy writing, to at least be cinematic, to at least be interesting, and to really hammer home that espionage feel. I mean, hello, she has the experience because she directed 6 episodes of the show. So why not take her on board for this movie? I don't understand. I don't understand what's going on in Marvel HQ. I genuinely do not. Is it because people are asking for too many zeros on their paycheck? Because if so, please just pay them. Please just pay them, because this end result is really not worth the headache. And yes, I'm not completely naive. I do know that Falcon and the Winter Soldier had its issues, but mostly to do with the villain. And considering the direction that they went in for this movie's villain being the leader, a very Hulk villain that barely had anything to do with Sam at all, I would have taken the risk still. Oh, especially because they already set up this idea of Sharon being the ultimate villain in the next chapter of Sam and Bucky's story. But listen, I don't have much more time and I don't want to end this on a dour note, so we'll move on to some of the positives of this film, and that was Sam himself. I think Anthony Mackie is perfectly cast as Sam Wilson. I really loved seeing him in the Captain America get-up. I mean, I still found it really inspiring, really encouraging, and just amazing to see this black character in the MCU take on the mantle of Captain America. I just wish it was more of a celebration and he was surrounded by a better production, but I've already talked about that. Just in terms of his performance, he ate, like he absolutely delivered. I completely bought him in this role. You can tell that he was like working on the physicality of Captain America, especially considering that he hasn't got the serum in him, and so he's just a regular old human trying his best, surrounded by vibranium armor. Like, oh, what's a man to do? What's a man to do? He is quite OP, to be honest, but he needs to be because he's going up against Hulks, literal Hulks. But speaking of that, I do like the fact that ultimately, even though he put up a good fight, a decent fight against Red Hulk, ultimately what won him the fight was, just talking to the Red Hulk and, trying to talk him down out of the rage that he was feeling and reminding him that he wanted to turn over a new leaf for his daughter. Weak excuse, but still, the way that Sam was able to talk to him kind of echoes his background as a counselor, especially for vets. Like, that ties into the way that he wants to be seen and presented as Captain America. Not someone that's just about fighting and punching, but also someone who speaks to people, particularly soldiers and veterans. And that proves to be quite valuable when he's up against the Red Hulk, because there's no way that he was going to outpunch him. But just having that conversation and having that patience to try and level with him on an emotional level just really shows why Sam shines as the new Captain America and why Steve chose him. He had a couple of new suits in this film. They kind of ditched the one that he had at the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier for toy reasons probably, but also because Anthony Mackie hated the cowl on that thing. He was like, I'm never wearing that cowl again, and I was like, fair enough. So they got him a couple of new suits. Again, they were fine, they were good, definitely Captain America-esque, but again, there wasn't like that huge drastic change like we got with Steve Rogers' suits between the first Captain America movie and Captain America the Winter Soldier, where he goes all navy blue with the silver accents. Like, that was such a striking change and such an iconic suit, one of the best, honestly, and we didn't really get that same wow factor in this movie. Nothing gave us a wow factor in this sorry, but it was just underwhelming. Anyways, he looked good in the suits and he absolutely delivered on the action sequences. It's just a shame that they weren't well directed or choreographed, or there were moments where they bothered to show us how Sam's unique accessories and weapons like Red Wing and the wings kind of differentiated his fighting style against Steve's, so that was nice. But again, I just wish there was more. I just wish there was more of that and more pomp and circumstance was made of that, but it wasn't, especially because the score sucked, so there was no lead up to those heroic moments. And in terms of the supporting cast overall, I thought that some were great. Shout out to Danny Ramirez for being my second favorite character in this film. I love me some Joaquin. I think he's so cute. I love the way that he kind of follows Sam around like a puppy, and he's just a big fan of the Falcon, asking Sam for some tips and tricks. I really love that, you know. I would have loved to see more of the character, but they kind of snapped off his wings. And by the end of the film, he was very badly injured, which puts him out of commission. It did allow for Sam to shine on his own, which he kind of needed, to be honest. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more of Joaquin still. Hopefully he recovers quickly and we can see him like in the Avengers or Young Avengers or somewhere. I don't know what they're doing next. But I really enjoyed his character and the banter that he had with Sam. But I will say, it still did not hold a candle. It still didn't hold a candle to the banter that Sam had with Bucky. And that was made painfully apparent when we finally got a cameo from Bucky himself, who is just a joy. Honestly, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you guys already know I'm a huge Bucky stan. So yeah, I was delighted to see him on camera, and the whole energy of the film moved up. Maybe that's just because of me. Maybe that's just because I was excited to see him. But I'm telling you guys, the chemistry that they have together as like frenemies is just unmatched, and one of the most devastating, horrific decisions that this film ever made was exiling Bucky from the story. It was a huge mistake, because really and truly this film would have been 10 times better at the very least if Bucky was by Sam's side. To be fair, perhaps it would have been tough for Sam to stand out on his own in his first solo outing as Captain America if Bucky was by his side, this kind of legacy character from Steve's story. Like, I get that side of things. But if you want a superior film, and if you want superior dialogue even, and just superior screen chemistry, you need to have both of them together, because I don't make the rules, but they just fit so well together that anything less than that is just disappointing. And finally, I was also a fan of Harrison Ford's performance as President Ross. It was just a delight to see him. I love that he's collecting this paycheck. Did it have to be Harrison Ford? No. Did he bring something special to the table? Kind of. Like, yeah, I enjoyed seeing Harrison Ford in his first and probably last outing in the MCU. Although I will say, if we're really going to shout out excellent recent Harrison Ford performances, then we need to talk about Shrinking Season 2. Because Shrinking Season 2, if you're not watching Shrinking, guys, if you're a Harrison Ford fan and you're watching Shrinking, you need to change that up immediately. Shrinking Season 2 was exceptional and he was exceptional in it. So that's what I would give him the award for, not really for this work. I mean, there were scenes where very clearly he and Anthony Mackie were nowhere near each other, despite the fact that they were supposed to be talking to one another. And I know that that's because of the reshoots and the issues in production that this film had, but I think it presented quite a bit of a challenge for the characters to really build a rapport on screen. And then in terms of the rest of the cast, we had Giancarlo Esposito being wasted in this franchise and Tim Blake Nelson being there and looking creepy. And then there were some other characters that we don't even need to get into. So like overall, fine. Like as long as Sam was able to deliver, that's pretty much all that really matters. But Anthony Mackie's performance wasn't enough to save a lot of the issues that this film had, I'm afraid. Not to say that it was a disaster, even though I've been pretty negative on it, but that's just because I want to rant to you guys. Like that doesn't mean that it's the worst film ever. It's a somewhat decent B movie, like I said, the likes of which you would usually see Jason Statham or Gerard Butler in the middle of. And it would be released in January and it would have this very patriotic, pro-military message that all the American dads can get behind. This film kind of felt like it was only made because it was heavily funded by the US military to drive up numbers in conscription amongst black men. That literally feels like the raison d'etre of this movie. So as much as I had an okay time with it as a Marvel fan, I don't see myself revisiting this entry in this franchise anytime soon. So with all of that being said, I'm going to be giving Captain America Brave New World a 6 out of 10. So that's it from me, guys. Now that I told you guys my thoughts on Captain America Brave New World, it's time for you guys to let me know what you thought of this movie down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch you videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.